Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to have you here for our next event of the P&G Alumni Insights and Analytics Forum. We have an amazing topic for you today. It actually stems from the survey that some of you may have taken recently in the emails we sent after the last event, our first event. And it's all about connections, and we know connections are super important, both in the goal of finding new opportunities for your career and building those relationships, as well as in finding new clients if you're on the service side, or just frankly keeping up your relationships and your friends. So we've got kind of three sections today. The first one is give you a little bit of background on the Insight and Analytics Forum. Then we're going to have the amazing Kendra Speed speak for a while with a Q&A session. And then we're going to break roughly, give or take, 11:45-ish to go into live networking and put these principles in practice. So first off, thank you very much to the Insights and Analytics Forum leadership team, co-founder Ann Wymore and the rest of the crew. Everybody here has contributed to a lot of the effort for planning these events for you, and would welcome your outreach, connect with us, make suggestions to us, volunteer to help us. We'd love to collaborate in whatever you do and make friends and try to help each other. Just for those of you who aren't familiar, this is on the website under the Insights and Analytics Forum page. But our four focus areas are building connections, providing professional development and capabilities enrichment, helping your career and bring organizational insight, and then also helping with the community. This is all very relevant to the topic today because connections obviously help in point one and point three, but also other people are means to building your capabilities as well. A couple of technical notes you should see somewhere on the bottom of your screen. It may not look exactly like this, but a chat button. I welcome you to join the chat and see people talking. If you could go in and say hello and where you're from, that would be great. I think we have 45 participants there so far. So we're building, and it's great to see some of the names pop up that I haven't seen for a while. There's also a Q&A button that you can ask questions anywhere during the session. Our amazing team member, Jeff Adler, is going to be monitoring that. And when we get to the Q&A session, he'll be sharing it with everybody and have questions, wisdom shared with you. A advance notice, we don't have the title, but we've got the guy, and this is an important guy to have. Kirti Singh, the head of Analytics, Insights, and Media Office and Media from P&G, will be speaking on March 5th at 11 a.m. to our group. You can see just by nature of the title, he is not the head of customer and market knowledge. He's not the head of market research. So you can see the transformation coming just from the nature of his title. And it's going to be a fascinating talk about what's happening today and what's happening in the future. So please, by all means, save that date, and you'll have registration links coming out in the next week or two. Also, if you want to make sure, doubly sure you're getting our forum announcements, go to the website and under my newsletters in the profile in the top right corner, you can type in first couple of letters in the Insights and Analytics Forum comes up, and you can click that to update notifications to make sure you get our news. And then, as I said, we are going to have live networking at the end. It's going to be a different Zoom session. So Zoom technology being what it is, we actually have to move from the P&G Alumni webinar platform to the AccuPool Research meeting platform so that we can all talk and congregate. And someday maybe Zoom will fix that for us. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Kendra Speed. Kendra brings amazing relevance to this topic. Coming from LinkedIn, she should know better than most the value of connections, how to build connections, how to contribute and make those mutually beneficial relationships. She also has the wisdom earned from multiple years at these different companies. As you see, her full bio came in the email. And she has the kindness to spend the time for prepping for this series of remarks and the kindness to share her wisdom with you, answer your questions, and also be a volunteer along with me and others on the board of the P&G Alumni Network. So Kendra, if you could go camera on, we're going to get started. And I think, Kendra, do you want me to cue the poll or go ahead and...
We can go ahead and cue the poll. Sure. I'll go ahead and speak. So first, thanks, Jeff, for the introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here. As I think about it, I'm here with my peeps. So I know that I do not know each one of you individually, but I do feel a sense of camaraderie, knowing that many of us have, done similar things within our career, and we sit here as insights and analytics leaders. So I just really thank you for allowing me to share with this forum today. And what's always helpful for me is to get a bit of a pulse check of who's here today and how you come into this discussion. So Jeff has thrown up two polling questions. I would ask that you answer each. The first one being, tell me a little bit about how you are using LinkedIn or similar platforms today. So is it to build your career? Is it to build your business, or a little of both? And then secondly, how difficult is it to build or expand relationships for you? So just take a few moments, and if you can, answer those two questions.
We're doing pretty well. We've got 39 responses so far in building out of 58 attendees. So 70% participation rate. We'll give it another 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then share the results.
Okay.
But early tab top line is very high on stay connected with friends and colleagues at 85%. And a little bit more to build my business versus build my career, 42 and 48%. And responses are slowing down, so share it.
Great. So we'll pop this up here. So thanks already for a little bit of the preview. So answers to the first question, we see that we come to this with a mix of different reasons for why individuals are using LinkedIn today. So by and large, kind of this network effect of being able to stay connected with friends and colleagues. That's great. Also, this mixture between both building career, building business, and that blend of that. So it's great to see how we come into that. My hope is that I'll be able to speak a bit to some of these, and as well as challenging our thinking a bit on how you think about leveraging LinkedIn, both to nurture existing relationships, but also to extend and build new ones. And then secondly, looking at how difficult it is for individuals to build or expand relationships. So, 18% of us say, hey, it's not very difficult. Like, it's a superpower, huh? And then we see that there is, most of us fall into the camp of, it being somewhat difficult, and then 10% being at very difficult. So as we go throughout, my formal discussion today, but then as we get into Q&A, I would love to explore some of the questions that you might have as you think about what you're running into, as you think about the difficulty of being able to build and expand relationships. So thanks for the poll. First, I wanted to begin with a little bit of vulnerability. So as I think about the topic of networking and I reflect back after, being in the working world for a little over 20 years, I will admit that early in my career, it really was this feeling of discomfort that came along with the topic of networking. Networking for me was showing up at a happy hour after hours, after you were already worked a long day, a room full of, heavy hors d'oeuvres and cocktails, people you may or may not know, and then having to go through this long, long for me, 2 hours of small talk and really, worrying about how I look. Am I saying the right words? Am I representing my professional brand in the best way? It brought a lot of stress along with it. Also, as I think about networking as a term, for me, it brings this veneer of fakeness, griminess that came along with it. And I really can't say that I loved it. If that's something that you can, relate to, I would love if you put, some thoughts about that in the chat. While I can say that I have grown in my outlook in thinking about networking as being something from something that is just transactional into something that can be mutually beneficial and relational and enduring. I will say that there are times where, I still get that feeling in the pit of my stomach as it relates to either connecting with someone in, a virtual world, as well as when I think about showing up at a conference and meeting someone new. So if you're feeling a little discomfort when it comes to growing or building your network, you see some difficulty with it, know that you're not alone. So when I joined LinkedIn almost 3 years ago, I purposely joined the company because I viewed it as an opportunity for me to learn more about the power of networking, building my personal brand, and how it might benefit my overall career trajectory. While, I have the pleasure every day of being able to lead up a consumer market knowledge team, um, I very much was thinking about how working at LinkedIn would benefit me at this point in my career. But I will say, admittedly, coming in the door, I hadn't really spent that much time thinking about what it meant to build strategic relationships as a route to building my career. That might sound somewhat surprising, but for me, I really tended to think about traditional network as more as something you did to get a new job, to get a sales connection, or to facilitate an introduction. But coming into LinkedIn really provided me a sense of liberation as I think about working for a company that actually encourages me to be on, LinkedIn as much as I want to throughout the course of a day in between meetings. They encourage the experimentation with the features and also really value that I spend time in building my own professional network, but then also fostering network on the app. And so for me, that means a lot. It's really helped facilitate my own growth, the growth in my network, and really led me to think about networking beyond the confines of a corporate environment. So more broadly, as we think about the marketplace. So one thing that I want to do is any good, market researcher would do or insights and analytics person would do. I want to start with a little bit of assessing the landscape. So I want to understand and share with you how networking has evolved over time. So Jeff, I'll ask if we can move on to the next slide. Yes. So really, as I think about networking and how it's evolved just in throughout the existence of LinkedIn as a platform. So LinkedIn, came to be in 2003. And so we worked alongside WGSN to be able to understand how networking has evolved over time. So some of the key things that come out here is that there have been three distinct phases as we think about networking over time. First, as we think about networking, it has really evolved from something that feels super exclusive. It only happens in certain venues to something that is much more about, one, being inclusive, anyone can network. Also being something that is not, it doesn't have to be confined to these formal spaces for networking, but there is a degree of serendipity that comes along with networking. And then secondly, there's also this aspect about, there have been challenges that have arose as you think about things like living through a pandemic, people moving to remote or hybrid working situations, that take it from that physical realm of where everyone in your network you have met before into something that is much more focused in on the ability to engender trust, authenticity, as well as really bring about and foster belonging in networks that are built. And then thirdly, as you think about where we're going, where we sit today and where we're going, is that networks have become, increasingly informal, fluid, and personalized. We go into the next slide, just go a bit deeper as we think about each of these phases. So in the early 2000s, as we think about like how networking happened during those times, it was around like the event that I talked about at first. It was you show up at the happy hour or you show up at the Reds game and you are there, yes, for some social activity, but really to be able to get to know people a bit more. Events tended to be in person. The interaction was physical in nature. And there was this whole aspect of you bring your printed business card, you are prepared to provide it to someone else, you take their business card, and you're building this physical, and then you became digital Rolodex of contacts along the way. Also, as you thought about like how you nurtured your network, it would be, hey, let's meet out at the golf course. We have a standing golf date. I can recall being in business school and learning the game of golf as being one of the expectations. And but what happens when you didn't play golf? What happens when you weren't good at it? There was this degree of exclusiveness to that. If you weren't a part of that crowd, you just weren't a part of it, in a degree of, some people being locked out of some of the networks. And then also when you think about, there was this aspect of like, we're networking up, like we're networking for the purpose of career advancement and laddering up. So you get the name of this person at this company, and then you want to meet who their boss is. And then you want to think about the next person you need to influence. So this whole aspect of who is the next person that you need to meet, as you think about career growth. On the next slide, really go into what that next phase looked like. So 2008 to 2020, that really looks like things started migrating online. And so then became the aspect of where you could think about networking at scale. So you weren't dependent on, how many people you were able to meet in person, that Rolodex, but you were able to scale out your network and think about those connections. But then also there was also this aspect of like you're always on. So you're going to show up on places like LinkedIn, even Facebook, as your best representative, right? Like it might not be fully myself, but I'm going to show up as the best representation of who I am as a professional. And so this whole aspect of curating a public persona, which endures today. There's this other aspect. So I don't have the visual in here today, but there's this popular visual that our LinkedIn CEO has put out there that talks about career pathing. Whereas traditionally we thought of, careers as growing as very linear. Now careers have become like extremely like squiggly. So it's that, I can do this as my day job. I'm multi-hyphenated. There are all of these different facets and blurred lines between who we are and how we might bring our whole selves to this virtual world of networking. So on the next slide, really gets into this view of 2020 and beyond. So where we sit today is that, networking events have become networking encounters. To me, that's like super interesting in thinking about like networking can be done in these micro moments or these micro engagements along the way. It really speaks to some of that serendipity that I spoke to earlier. Also, this aspect of, I think this is a power data point as you think about during the period of COVID, networks shrank 16%. So as people were in their homes, yes, networking was important for professional success, but networks also extended in importance as you thought about really bolstering the emotional care of people. And so people really look to these networks as trusted environments. So I can think about different things that sprang up during my own COVID experience, where, this Saturday gathering that we would do every week just by way of breaking through the craziness became something that endures to today. Like it's not no longer a weekly aspect, more of a monthly aspect, but it was a network that was developed based upon common interest and common need for connection during a time where it was difficult to connect. And then, this whole aspect about portfolio careers. So Gen Z will say that they expect to have at least three fully different careers in their lifetimes. So many of us can probably relate to this and saying, like, yeah, I'm on my second or third career, but I look at least, and this being the average on average, is saying that, thinking about careers, it's going to continue to totally evolve and shift. So with that, and actually, Jeff, if you don't mind, I don't know if we can go from not sharing the slides because, that's my last slide. And I love the aspect of maybe being full screen and then also being able to look into the chat a bit. So I'll take a pause just because I'm interested in some of the things that are kind of piping in. Also, if you want to share any insights that are coming up for you along the way, I see one comment here is saying like, I've started my second career and LinkedIn is very helpful in growing in this new space. Not yet ready for full Q&A, but I do want people to feel free to add in your insights, your ahas along the way, so that we can all benefit from what's really sparking with you. I'll keep going a bit further. Really one of the things that I also want to spend some time with is talking through some of the myths that I've seen spring up a long time, either looking in, consumer data or being able to speak with individuals outside of LinkedIn. For me, I have like this big five that I really want to share with you today by way of inspiring you to think maybe a little differently about overarching networking. So I'll start with my first one. The first myth is that your profile is a copy and paste of your resume. No, this is a total falsehood. Your profile is not a carbon copy of your resume. So I promise you, last night as I was preparing for what I would talk about today, putting the finishing touches on it, one of my friends texted me and she asked me, "Oh, can you take a look at my resume in advance of me putting it on LinkedIn?" So what I will say is it is fine to have a link to your resume from your profile. That is perfectly fine. What is not okay is just picking up your resume and copying and pasting it into the profile. As I look at my own profile in full transparency, what I will say is over time, I have gotten a little better in thinking about using my profile for what it's intended to be versus just copying and pasting. But earlier career pieces, I do see like, oh, that looks like a copy and paste from a resume. It should not be. Really, as I think about what your profile would be, is I would start with this prompt. So there's a prompt that I often give to candidates who are interviewing for roles within our company. And what I will say is, tell me your career story in 2 minutes. What title would you give it? So if you take that same prompt and apply it to your profile, that provides the opportunity of thinking about what is the story that I wish to tell at this point in time about my career, where it's been, and how might I find words to put in my headline, that headline that falls beneath your profile picture, that really helps characterize who I am as a professional. So no, your profile is not a copy of your resume. Secondly, so the second myth here is that you should do your profile once and you leave it. No, your profile is not some sort of static statement. For me, I really think about my profile as the place where I can go and experiment. So it's the place where I can go and say, oh, I have this traditional headshot. I'm wearing a business suit. Let's see how that plays in really being able to personify who I am as a professional. And then a week later saying like, you know what? I don't really think that represents me. I bring more of a casual style to the way that I interact with my potential clients. So I'm going to do more of a personality image, which can still be professional, but you might change what you're wearing or what your backdrop looks like. So I really think about your profile as a place to experiment, not just with pictures, but then also with how you are framing your career. So for the individual that said, like, I'm embarking on my second career and LinkedIn is a big help to that, I would say probably what your profile looked like before that career shift is different than what it should look like today. It's okay for us to adapt and grow and experiment along the way. Thirdly, so this third one is a true pet peeve for me personally, is this sense of this belief that you have to ask for permission to connect with someone. This is a myth that I want to actively dispel because, I really think about the origins of LinkedIn that are very much rooted in this professional networking, staying connected in the professional realm. So the purpose of this platform is really rooted in creating professional network that produces mutual benefit. Honestly, when someone comes up to me, either sends me a message or I meet them in person, like at one of the conferences, and they ask me, are you open to connecting with me? I'm a bit thrown off because while I do believe it is polite to ask, there's nothing wrong with asking a question, it feels very imbalanced. It comes across as if the individual only has something to gain by connecting with me versus really looking at it as this is an opportunity for both of us to benefit from being in connection with one another. So I'll give the example of Beth. Last year, Beth reached out to me on LinkedIn. She wanted to connect. And further, she told me, like, hey, I'm going to be in Atlanta for one of the conferences that was happening there and would love to connect over, coffee. Let's be real. Like, definitely the in-mail came across as like, surprise, like I'm from XYZ supplier. I'll be in Atlanta on this day and I want to have some of your time to sell you my services. So it definitely had like all of the trappings of an unsolicited sales call, but I leaned into it because I'm like, hey, I'm going to be here. I have time. I can get up a little earlier before the conference and connect. Through that connection, I was able to, yes, learn more about the company that she worked for and further understand that Beth had recently come out of academia where she was leading a marketing department at a Midwestern university. And now she was like a vice president at the research supplier. And so not only did I learn about her company, but I picked her brain about what her experiences have been, what the transition was like as she moved from academia onto the supplier side? What did she like about each? Asking all of those questions, not knowing that 9 months later, I would be sitting here, in my first instructor role at a university and needing to reach back out to her to be able to get further insight on what her experiences have been. So again, one, we should not, it is polite to ask if people are willing to connect with you, but I very much believe we should not be coming at the building of our network with a sense of we have to ask for anything. The platform is actually there for people to network, and people who are most active on the platform see the benefit from growing and expanding their network. So there's no need to ask. A related piece here is also this belief that, your professional network is limited to who you might personally know and have worked with. So I think it is great that people are on LinkedIn and using it most to be able to stay connected with those people that they already know. But what I will tell you is by keeping your network constrained to that, it actually can work against you. So our internal data shows that there are many benefits of having an expansive network. And some of those benefits really include you being able to have greater outcomes when it comes to getting a job. Also, the ability for you to surface greater diversity of content. So oftentimes I'll hear members talk about like, it's hard to find, all I see in my feed, and this might be the next one. All I see in my feed are like, job changes from my network. I'm not seeing a lot of new information or knowledge coming through. Some of that might be by virtue of who you've chosen to connect with. We benefit from being able to expand those who we are following, connecting with, because we're going to just see so many different types of content and be able to consume different types of knowledge. And then the last piece of that is as you really take off the boundaries of your network, this allows for broader sphere of influence, whether it's you thinking about the network when you're next looking for your next job, of people that you can reach out to, your network in helping you make introductions and making that next sale. Fifth, so the last one here is this myth that it's near impossible to come up with a steady stream of posts that come across as authentic and personable. So that is a myth. It is possible to have substantive content on LinkedIn and to be a part of having the creation of knowledge on the platform. And so we hear a lot about professionals and how their feeds are full of all of these humble brag posts. You know them. They are the posts about people, finding new jobs, which we celebrate, people being promoted, people speaking here, speaking there. And let's be clear, I am one of those people who is, who puts up some of these humble brag posts. And what I will say is, while it is great to see a lot of that, there is an opportunity to think differently about what the types of content that we choose to post. It is not about like, is this good enough for me to put in this platform of where people will judge me by their likes or by their comments, and really an opportunity to lean in. So I wanted to cite some of the examples that I just had top of mind as I think about people within our network. So within Insights and Analytics, there are P&G alums who I've observed doing different things and might prove as inspiration for how we might approach it. This is not an exhaustive list. It is just a list to demonstrate some of the diversity of how people are approaching this. So first, I would call out, Sarah Buckley Faulkner. So she's someone who puts up periodic posts about, she's talking about her company's expertise, and then you also find her out in the community in, different Insight Association meetings, things like that. And with that, she's able to grow the credibility of her business, and she's also showing up as someone who is giving to the industry. I also give out like Yogesh Chavda. So he's built an online and in-person industry following as an AI guru. So he's meshed together like his standing as a university professor along with someone that has his own business into posting podcasts, newsletters, all about AI in market research, and has really built a following. Even still, I give the example of Autumn McDonald, who takes a slightly different approach. So she's someone that comes in with providing personal perspectives to current marketplace topics, with the outcome of she's able to build a brand that really is characterized by her credibility, by her perspective, and somewhat like this unafraid POV, and also having this outlook of market centricity. So I will go one step further in saying, like, are you just looking for a practical way of thinking about building post engagement? I give the example of Courtney Pegan Stevens, and she's someone who, one, she placed an intentional effort in sharing either original content or compelling articles about different topics, and she's mastered the hook of like that closing question. So she'll say, "Hey guys, this is an interesting article," and then she'll pose like a probing question to be able to engage others to comment on her post. And then she follows up with those comments with other thoughts or invites to be able to connect offline to continue the conversation. Just some practical examples of how different people are leveraging posting, creation of content on LinkedIn as a way to build their personal brand, build their career and or business, and are doing it successfully in different ways. So for me personally, I've started a note in my phone, which has become a bit of a diary where I just write down different topics as I encounter them in the day. So I know there's at least probably one person on this call. So Jocelyn. Jocelyn can probably attest to in our weekly team meetings, I might bring up a comment or like a thought that I have in mind. I write that down. And on good days, maybe by the end of the day, I've created a post that's about that, or either I'll create the post first in anticipation of coming into the meeting. But there's very much like this sense of a running list of topics that I think others might benefit from hearing my perspective of. And I think there's this other piece. I think many of us are probably mid to later stage in our careers, but if there are anyone who is listening, is that we each have something to provide perspective of. So because we do a lot of experimentation in-house, there's someone on our marketing team who's been working here like, maybe 2 years, very early career. And she wanted to figure out what she could post on. So she started posting like videos about, so you're going on your first business trip, or so you're going to your first team offsite. What should you expect? We all have something of value to offer to a broader network of individuals. And so the other piece is, we can take a lot of what sits at the foundation of capability and skills that we've honed over time toward really being able to understand who is our target audience that we're trying to speak to, and then backing up and understanding which individuals, which companies are doing a really good job of engaging them, and then experimenting with some of the things that we see people are getting success from. So the other thing I will say is while I am a huge advocate of LinkedIn as a way to nurture relationships, I am not here as a commercial. And I do not carry the view that LinkedIn is the only place to really think about nurturing your network. It is a great enabler to scaling your network, but it is not a substitute for offline relationship building. So, as someone who joined P&G over 20 years ago as an intern, I still have relationships today that began in Cincinnati and have endured over time. And even as I think about those relationships, they have definitely, grown in some respects. Maybe some have like more so narrowed over time. So I have a diversity of relationships. And so I will say some of these relationships have developed as you would expect, where, we just stay in touch, we catch up maybe on family news, or, they're willing to provide me a reference. But I've also seen that the value of just like this insights and analytics network has been awesome for me personally. So it's been helpful in me securing at least two of my post P&G roles. It's been helpful in, for when I was out as an independent consultant and getting projects for myself, but then also in me being able to provide opportunities for others. It's been opportunities for my husband to grow in his own chosen profession. There's been all of these partnerships on projects. There's been coaching and mentoring along the way. And ultimately, there's been the cultivation of friends who are now more like family. So I can imagine that everyone finds themselves at a different range. I know we're at the point now where we want to move a bit into some of the Q&A, so I will pause. The other thing that I will say is, and if you don't mind, Jeff, I just want to end with this last little points. I want to challenge you, leave you with this challenge as we go into Q&A. Over the next 2 weeks, I would like for you to, one, write an original post on LinkedIn. Secondly, experiment with your profile, and really think about a skills forward approach that answers the question of what is your career story? Thirdly, connect to 5 new people. There's a lot of people in the chat. There's no shortage of people that you can connect with. You can refer back to some of the names that I mentioned earlier on. And then also I would say follow 10 top voices within the platform, because that also helps with being able to understand how people are cultivating their audience and knowledge building. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Kendra. So you would imagine that this group of insights professionals had a great time coming up with really great questions. We won't get to these all, but I'm going to give you a chance to get started. So let's start with, what's your go-to message when you want to connect with somebody, or are there times where you should just hit connect without context?
I think it's a great practice to include a message. The ones that I find most compelling are ones that demonstrate an understanding of the things that I care about and I'm talking about. So I might get something that says like, hey, I really enjoyed your last post about XYZ, would love to connect. That shows, hey, you have a concerted interest in me. And then they might also give a hook for what their way in is. That would be like a good cold, introduction. I am not into the passive introduction of maybe might we connect, I think demonstration of an understanding of the individual, the value that they bring, and then demonstrating the value that you can bring back is the best way to approach it.
Paula Asmus would like to know, can you explain a hypothesis as to why networking shrank during COVID? It seems like that would have been counterintuitive.
Yeah, so this is great. So this is an outside data point. What I would say is, I think people were feeling you're in your house, and yes, you want to reach out to others, but the openness to reaching out to others outside of this safe space, I think required a bit of vulnerability that many people weren't willing to do. But it is something, Paula, that I can look back and see like what other insight we might have on that as a topic.
And Ann Wymore asks, I've learned so much from LinkedIn about AI, ML, and media, mostly from P&G alums. Any advice on formal LinkedIn learning tools to use on these topics?
Okay. I'm trying to process it in my head. So I'll also look at it. Okay. So definitely. So we definitely have like a whole sphere of LinkedIn learning that if your company provides that would be a great resource to be able to learn from. I think the other piece is just leveraging pieces like the search capability. We also have collaborative articles as a space within LinkedIn where you can go and find other experts weighing in on these topics. The other piece I would do the plug for is start using some of the capabilities that are available on LinkedIn today that deal in that space of leveraging AI in your job search, in your post creation, some of those places.
Seems there are right and wrong ways to use LinkedIn, and the rules are not entirely clear. Can you maybe give some do's and don'ts?
So I will first say I don't really view life in that way, like right, wrong. There are probably better ways of leveraging. So one is being open to experimentation. That should be a theme that you pull away. Like that is a do, like being open to experimentation. I think the other thing is I do not view the approach to the platform as something like a make or break. Like there are definitely make or break things that can happen that can tarnish your credibility. But I think there's so much opportunity there that I choose not to view it in that way. Don't just paste your resume onto your profile. Don't just stay constrained to the people that you know today. Do experiment. Do lean in and really think about LinkedIn as a tool for crafting your professional brand. Do extend your network.
Thanks. Okay, so saved up one of the harder ones. Um, Sophia Toe asks, what are the best strategies for building a global networking approach on LinkedIn, particularly focused on Asia, while considering language and cultural differences?
Yeah, okay. So I would probably break this down. I think the language piece is probably an opportunity, but understanding that there definitely are translator tools on the platform that can help. The other piece is we just take a lot of these insights that we already have. We're insights professionals. So I would say spend some time in understanding what are the topics that are going to be most compelling for your desired audience and begin talking about it, begin sharing about it. Other pieces are look for someone with the same profile as you. So if it's someone who might, and I don't know if this where this person is based, like who might be based in the same market as you are and going after a similar target audience and experiencing success, I would leverage that as a model and start extracting examples that work for you. I am not saying that we copy and don't credit other people's posts. What I'm saying is that we can use those for inspiration in creating and customizing our own approach.
Thanks. Melanie Williams asks, what is your advice on how to best highlight our work experience that's from more than 10 years ago, especially if it helps frame our current story?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take a slightly different approach to this. Haven't talked much about the use of video. So one is you can definitely do it on your profile, but I want to think about a different way of doing it. Let's say that you have a really compelling example or story that you want to tell that helps complete out a perspective of who you are as a professional. Create a video about it. Create like a minute and a half or less video that just talks about that experience. You can feature it on your profile, and so it would be one of the first things that people see that come up. And we're still working on getting greater penetration of people using video. So there's probably greater likelihood that we'll be able to engage on it.
And Matthew Pereira asks, when you discover someone on LinkedIn and manage to connect, is there a best practice for transitioning from initial connection to eventual meeting? It's clear that this takes time, but how much time? What type of initial interaction cadence do you recommend before asking for a meeting?
Yeah, so I would recommend first coming in with like a softer engagement point, like even like, hey, I saw this article that you wrote it was really interesting. Here were some key insights I got from it. Wait for that response, and then maybe give it a beat and come back and do one more engagement piece that demonstrates, hey, I'm looking at what you're doing. I'm benefiting from being connected to you. It would be great. Like, do you have 15 to 30 minutes that we can have an informal chat to be able to talk through it? I do not give the assurance that every person you reach out to will have the time, the inclination to set up conversations beyond being connected on the platform. However, I think it's more than you would think, where there are people who are specifically on the platform to share expertise, who want to give back, who want to engage and learn from you. So, uh, I think it's give it a bit of a beat. Like, I don't agree with coming in with like the hard sell, like, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time now? I think it has to demonstrate like an understanding of who this individual is, what their unique needs might be, or hook in to want to talk to you.
So thanks to Kristen Howell, who is now asking the question that I think 100% of the people on the call are going to find useful, because it's sort of a mechanics, right? The nitty gritty. Kristen's asking, of those here who offered to connect, in many cases I tried, but only a few profiles have the connect button. Some have follow, and one had neither. Why is that? And what do you do about it?
Yeah, so I can definitely speak about the connect and follow. I'm not sure about the neither. I can get more insight and share that back. So connect is the traditional way that most people find themselves linking with others in the network. Follow is something for those who have indicated they are a creator. So my profile is set to follow. What that does is, I think this morning I might be 15 away from reaching like a 5,000 follower account. It's a milestone. So it initially has you following that person, so you can look at the things that that they are writing about, but you're not yet like connected to them as a friend. But usually once you press the follow button, you can also, the next thing that comes up is the ability to connect. So usually if someone follows me and they ask to connect, then I'm gonna connect with you as well.
Great answer. And I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that by the end of today, you'll hit those 15 and make your 5,000.
Thank you. Yeah.